VPT Model and Analysis of Silicon Valley Economic History. From 1991 to 2025, number 1435, VPT Sharp 008, November 12, 2025. Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Economics. Preface. Before I analyzed Silicon Valley as an economic system, I was part of its history and mechanical engine. From 1979 through 1988, I was a fanatic for startup creation. An entrepreneur working in personal computers, CAD software, and AI algorithms for various industrial applications. During that decade, I tried and failed 7 times. Most of these failures were caused by insufficient funding, or by product ideas that were too early for their time, such as my 1983 concept of today's ChatGPT, limited by the processing speed and storage capacity of computers available in 1983. From 1988 to 1990, I worked on GPU software design at Sun Microsystems. I also sold GPU-related inventions to imaging and reproduction equipment giants, Kodak, Xerox, and Canon, enabling them to transform their dumb machines into smart printers and copiers, similar to today's intelligent multifunction devices. In early 1991, I became IC Division President of Cadence and later founded my own enterprise Avant Corporation, specializing in IC chip design automation. I pioneered and personally helped and witnessed the transformation of semiconductor design, from manual layout to full algorithmic automation. The core technologies of placing millions of transistors and routing multimillion electrical wires. The backbone of modern integrated circuit, IC, design. Originated from my own AI algorithms, developed from knowledge I learned at the University of Iowa in computer science, undergraduate courses, from 1969 to 1971, and at MIT graduate courses under the father of academic AI, Professor Patrick Winston's machine learning program, from 1972 to 1974. Interestingly, the placement and routing of transistors and wires resemble the principles of modern brain neuroscience, especially neuroplasticity and the brain's ability to regenerate neurons. Like transistors, and self-repair neural pathways, like wires. These parallels between semiconductor architecture and human neurodynamics later inspired many of my medical research. Studies in the area of neuroscience and stroke recovery. These theoretical methods and practical experiences became the central infrastructure of the global semiconductor industry, now embedded in nearly every AI tools and products, and computing chip in existence. In 1994, I started my own electronic design automation, ADA, and AI algorithm development company, Avant Corporation. In 1998, I began designing actual AI chips, not merely the supporting AI software tools underneath, nearly a decade before NVIDIA entered that field. By 2000, however, I suffered 3 heart attacks, caused by stress from extreme business competition, including a malicious lawsuit driven by jealousy and hostility from one of my main competitors. In 2002, out of concern for my health, I decided to sell my company to Synopsys, which would later dominate the industry with our developed products and technologies. Soon after, I left Silicon Valley, physically exhausted and emotionally wounded, yet intellectually unbroken and stronger than ever. Ironically, the year of my personal medical collapse also marked the beginning of Silicon Valley's first systemic rupture, the dot-com bubble and crash. Just as my body reached its viscoplastic limit under internal stress, the Valley's economy yielded under accumulated speculative pressure. Both systems, human and industrial, obey the same physical law. Once energy accumulation exceeds the elastic limit, irreversible deformation occurs. Now, in 2025, 23 years later, I return to Silicon Valley, not as an entrepreneur or businessman, but as a medical research scientist applying viscoplastopology. VPT, a framework that merges viscoplastic medicine theory, VMT, and topological data analysis, TDA. Thus far, I have written and published more than 1,400 medical and psychological research papers using these methods. By the way, I learned dynamic plasticity and viscoplasticity from my MIT PhD advisor, Professor Norman Jones, in the early 1970s. I also learned topology as an applied mathematics undergraduate student in 1967, under Professor K.H. Ting in Taiwan, a University of Michigan graduate and father of MIT Professor Samuel C. Ting, a Nobel Prize winner in physics, 1976. I also learned stochastic methods for structural safety studies at UC Berkeley in 1978. After my recent stroke, I started to apply topology in my biomedical research work. Introduction. Silicon Valley appears endlessly successful, yet beneath the surface, it behaves like a viscoplastic system, elastic during expansion, hardened under pressure, and permanently deformed when stress exceeds yield. This study treats the Silicon Valley's economy as a living structure, organic, like biomedicine, or inorganic, like engineering, that absorbs, stores, and dissipates energy over time. Following the same physics laws that govern both engineering materials and biomedical tissues, I analyzed three major economic deformation cycles within from 1990 to 2025. .com build-up and collapse, from 1990 to 2002, economic rebound driven by mobile, computing and cloud infrastructure, from 2003 to 2015, AI-driven expansion followed by an economic slowdown caused by rising interest rates and widespread job layoffs, triggered by AI automation, from 2016 to 2025. To model these transitions, I use the viscoplastic typology, VPT, framework combining 1. Viscoplastic medicine theory, VMT, to quantify cumulative deformation energy. 2. Topological data analysis, TDA, to examine the geometry of system change. Economic strain is represented by the Housing Price Deformation Index, HPDI, while the three selected stressors are employment rate, interest rate, and household income. HPDI reflects the degree to which home prices have stretched, or compressed relative to their economic support from income and employment. Just as material deformation reveals stress accumulation, HPDI reveals the tension between affordability, productivity, and financial pressure in the regional economy. This new research approach based on both energy and geometry replaces traditional statistical correlation or regression methods in economic research field. By integrating VMT and TDA, I can visualize Silicon Valley's 36-year journey as a continuous stress-strain path. A living economic organism evolving through repeated cycles of expansion, rupture, depression, and reorganization. VMT interpretation of Silicon Valley economic energy, from 1990 to 2025. VMT provides the quantitative backbone of this study. It measures how cumulative economic stress creates irreversible deformation, similar to fatigue in metals or long-term stress in human physiology. The same physical laws governing materials and biological tissues can also describe economic systems when stress and strain are properly defined. To capture these long-term economic cycles, the 36-year timeline from 1990 through 2025 is divided into 9 4-year periods, P1 P9. Each 4-year interval corresponds to a realistic business and innovation cycle, allowing the analysis to reveal structural trends, while filtering out short-term fluctuations. Period summary. P1, 1990-93, PC and semiconductor expansion. P2, 1994-97, CAD/CAM and workstation boom. P3, 1998-01, GPU and electronics design automation, ADA. P4, 2002-05, Internet infrastructure formation. P5, 2006-09, dot-com bubble and housing crisis. P6, 2010-13, recovery and early cloud computing era. P7, 2014-17, mobile devices and AI expansion in tech world. P8, 2018-21, pandemic slowdown and restructuring. P9, 2022-25, post-pandemic transformation and commercial AI, spread after June 2023, ChatGPT from OpenAI. As previously mentioned, the viscoplastic model defines HPDI as the output strain and employment, interest rate, and household income as its three stressor inputs. My proprietary iPhone-based EclaireMD AI software automatically calculated all strain stress coordinates, viscoplastic energy areas, and cumulative VMT energy ratios. Quantitative findings. From the cumulative VMT energy chart, total deformation energy reached 100% by period 9. P1 P4, from 1990 to 2005, 0.84%. P5 P6, 2006-13, 28.6% and 25.3%. P7 P8, 2014-21, 39.2% and 33.5%. P9, 2022-25, 100%. The three stressor VMT energy contribution ratios are: employment is 46%, interest is 11%, income is 43%. These three different VMT energy contribution ratios confirm that human-driven productivity and income expansion are the dominant forces maintaining the region's vitality, while governmental and banking industrial monetary control through interest rate contributes only marginally to total energy behavior. Interpretation from viscoplastic mechanics. In viscoplastic systems, materials behave elastically. When stress is below yield strength, deform plastically. Once the yield limit is exceeded, and later undergo hardening or recovery through internal energy dissipation and structural reconfiguration. The same mechanical law applies to Silicon Valley's economic history. This means, hardening is structural reconfiguration, recovery is energy dissipation. Structural hardening occurs when the system reorganizes its internal structure to resist further deformation. Structural recovery occurs when accumulated stress energy is dissipated, and the system settles into a new equilibrium. Silicon Valley passed through 4 mechanical phases: elastic expansion, from 1990 to 2005, stress-strain proportional, reversible behavior, viscoplastic yield, from 2006 to 2013, dot-com collapse and financial crisis exceeded the yield threshold, post-yield hardening and recovery, from 2014 to 2021, reorganization through mobile devices, cloud computing, and AI, reactivation and structural transformation, from 2022 to 2025, final hardening into a new equilibrium with reduced elasticity. Each stressor maps to a mechanical domain. Employment is tensile stress, income is cohesive bonding, interest rate is compressive resistance. The dominance of employment and income energies shows that Silicon Valley's economic fabric is maintained primarily by human talent, salaries, innovation, and productivity, not by government or banking policies. Viscoplastic behavior and universality. These findings demonstrate that Silicon Valley's economy follows the same nonlinear, path-dependent laws observed in materials science, advanced engineering, and biomedical systems. Once yield occurs, full reversal is impossible. Only adaptation through reconfiguration. Each expansion and collapse leaves residual deformation, permanently changing the system structure. This viscoplastic pattern parallels human physiology, industrial mechanics, and even psychology, medicine, organ adaptation after chronic stress, engineering, metallic fatigue and strain hardening, psychology, disorders such as BPD improve partially, but permanent scars remain, economics, structural evolution after repeated booms and recessions. In all cases, partial reversibility is possible, but irreversibility always remains. This pattern has been observed consistently throughout my research in engineering, medicine, psychology, and now economics, toward the discipline of viscoplastic economics. The evidence here suggests that economics can be unified with physics through viscoplastic energy. Stress, strain, deformation, and dissipation are measurable quantities. Economic systems evolve irreversibly through accumulated energy and internal reconstruction. VMT conclusion. Silicon Valley's economy is not cyclical. It is path-dependent and irreversible. The viscoplastic framework reveals a complete physical transformation across 3 decades of loading cycles. The 2022-25 phase represents a hardened, mature system, resilient and adaptive, yet less elastic than its younger self in the late 1990s and early 2000s. These findings confirm that viscoplastic principles describe universal behaviors across domains. From neurons to metals, from organs to economies, from soul to body. The TDA interpretation of Silicon Valley economic topology, from 1990 to 2025. Topological data analysis, TDA, examines how multiple economic variables evolve together. By studying geometric connectivity and shape transformation, using the same dataset as VMT, I modeled Silicon Valley's economic topology with HPDI as the output, strain and employment, interest rate, and household income as inputs. Each 4-year period from 1990 to 2025 becomes one point in a 4D space, HPDI, employment, interest, income. The trajectory formed by these points of 9 periods reveals how the Silicon Valley region's economy deformed, adapted, and reconfigured under cumulative stress. Geometric overview. The updated 2D and 3D diagrams show clear asymmetry among the 3 stressors. Employment and income rise in parallel with increasing strain, while interest rate declines steadily. This produces a geometric inversion. 2 stressors drive deformation upward, while one acts downward as a damping force. A typical pattern of viscoplastic systems where tensile and compressive stresses coexist. PCA identifies PC1, dominant employment income direction. PC2, counteracting interest rate direction. PC3, minor short-term fluctuations. These directions indicate that productivity and income circulation drive modern Silicon Valley, while monetary policy plays a much lower energy stabilizing role. Topological phase transitions, from 1990 to 2025. Elastic expansion, from 1990 to 2005. Coherent movement and reversible deformation. Yield and divergence, from 2006 to 2013. HPDI strain rises sharply, interest inverts, topology becomes saddle-shaped. Reorganization and contraction, from 2014 to 2021. Employment and income realign, geometry contracts and stabilizes. Hardening and maturity, from 2022 to 2025. Compact manifold with minimal curvature, dominant employment income axis. Quantitative topology. The 3D TDA trajectory forms a tilted planar spiral, dominated by the employment income plane. The interest rate vector remains below this plane, confirming its low potential energy contribution. TDA continuity confirms an irreversible contraction from a 3D open manifold to a nearly 2D sheet. A geometric marker of viscoplastic hardening. VPT, alignment of VMT and TDA findings. VMT energy distribution. Employment is 46%. Income is 43%. Interest is 11%. TDA geometry maps this same energy distribution. Both methods converge on one truth: Silicon Valley's economy behaves as a viscoplastic system, driven by irreversible energy accumulation. Each cycle leaves residual deformation that permanently reshapes internal geometry, unified interpretation, and final conclusion. TDA shows evolution from a flexible, multidirectional structure in the 1990s to a compact, aligned geometry in the 2020s. VMT confirms cumulative stress harden this system through repeated loading cycles. Economic systems, like biomedical organs and engineering materials, follow the physics laws of viscoplastic deformation, path-dependent, partially reversible, and permanently reshaped by accumulated stress. Silicon Valley's stability today is not a return to its earlier form, but the emergence of a new hardened equilibrium. Employment and income remain dominant. Stressors' interest rate is now a minor damping factor. This study demonstrates that viscoplastic energy and topological geometry can be successfully applied to economic systems. It also proposes the beginning of a new interdisciplinary field, viscoplastopological VPT, economics, integrating physics, mathematics, engineering, biomedicine, psychology, and macroeconomics under one unified framework. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only, and does not constitute medical or financial advice. No doctor-patient or advisor-client relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.